Hi guys, it's Kristen with Soul Secrets. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do the video on my healing journey. This is going to be part 2 of my experience in the sweat lodge. And I didn't have like a little hut or anything, so I decided to look at some of my oracle and tarot cards, and I found a couple fitting ones. We got the Shaman here, Ancient Healing Wisdom, and the Cave Sanctuary. So this kind of reminds me of the Sweat Lodge, experience that I had. And then we have the Shaman, which is the guy that we did the Sweat Lodge with, which is my brother's friend. So I also decided to pull out 2 shaman stones that I have here. So these are my 2 shaman stones. And I got some kind of like sacral and root energy here with the oranges and the reds. I don't know. I just felt it was fitting. And then I got my incense stick going here. So let's get into it. So what happened here was once I arrived in Costa Rica, the first day and a half, we just kind of laid low, hung out, had some conversations, settled in at our place. And my brother he's got his own restaurant out there, and he makes really, really good vegan food. There's actually like some really cool things on the menu that he offers, such as like almost like a Big Mac burger. I think they're actually called Big Mac burgers. And no word of a lie, these burgers taste exactly like a Big Mac. They are so delicious. And they're healthy too, so they're not, unhealthy. So yeah, we just kind of chilled out, and then the following day is when we had to drive up to the temple area. So we gathered all our things, and we drove up there. It took about 45 minutes or so to get to the temple, which was my brother's friend there. And we had a sweat lodge ceremony planned for the evening, but the weather wasn't cooperating, and there was a lot of rain, and the weather was just crappy. So we ended up having to cancel it. And move it to the next morning. So initially what we were supposed to do is we were supposed to have the sweat lodge the day prior, and then have the ceremony the next day. Well, because of the weather, we had to move it to the following morning. So we ended up having the sweat lodge in the morning and the ceremony in the evening. I'm just gonna switch sides here because the incense is going in my face and it's bothering me. So the plan was to have the sweat lodge in the evening, and then to fast, to have a breakfast the next morning, and then to fast for the rest of the day, and then do the ceremony around 6 or 7 at night. Well, like I said, that didn't happen. So there were basically 2 ceremonies in one day, which was pretty intense, I must say. But it worked out the way it was meant to, and it was a good experience. So as hard as it was a good experience. So what we did was, I don't think we had breakfast that morning of the sweat lodge. I think we had to just go right into the sweat lodge. So we basically woke up, and then the cave is like it's made out of clay, so it's like this red clay, and it can really, really stain your clothes. So you want to make sure you wear something either old, or you want to try not to get any of the clay on your clothes. So we were told, there was the 4 of us, or no, sorry, 5 of us. So it was me, my dad, my brother, and my brother's friend and his girlfriend. So 2 women and 3 men. And we ended up going into, we had to change our clothes. We got into a bathing suit. All of us were wearing bathing suits. And I also brought myself a towel because, the ground is full of clay, full of red clay as well. So I didn't want to get my butt all, full of clay and wreck my bathing suit. So I brought a towel in. And before we all went in, we had to kind of do like a cleansing, okay, a purifying. So we all stood there, and the shaman, that the guy that held the sweat lodge, he lit some white sage, and he cleansed our bodies. And then once we were done that, we were instructed to go inside. And if any of you have ever been in a sweat lodge, I'm assuming most of you that are watching this video have not, because I don't think it's something a lot of people do. But basically, it's very dark inside, okay? It's like a cave, okay? It's like a small little round cave, like a half moon shaped cave, okay? It's a little hut, and you can't stand up in it, okay? Especially if you're tall. You need to go in. You kind of got to like crawl in, or kind of kneel down to get inside. So the shaman there, he had a fire prepared, okay? So he prepared this fire outside of the cave, okay, of the sweat lodge. And he had some, like, these big rocks, okay? So these big rocks were heating in the fire. So they were very hot. They were like an orange appearance. They were kind of sparkling from the heat. And he had like this big, huge pitchfork. So, like I said, we were all instructed to go inside. And what he did was he brought some of those rocks in. So they were just, heating up in the fire. And he took the pitchfork, and there was like a little circle inside of the cave, inside of the hut, like a fire pit type thing in the center. And we were all instructed to sit around the fire pit. So he brought the rocks in. He brought, I think it was like 2 or 3 at a time, and put them in the center of the pit. Actually, it might have been even more rocks than that. I don't recall how many rocks, but and then he takes water, and he pours the water over the rocks. And what that does is it creates an environment of heat and steam, okay? So after that, he had to shut the doors. And this sweat lodge lasts for literally like 2 hours. So if you guys have ever been in a sauna before, it's a very similar experience to a sauna. But it's actually hotter, and it's for a prolonged period of time. So you're actually in there for a lot longer than you would be in a sauna. So you're spending like 2 hours in this little hut. And the first thing I noticed that came over me when I first got in there was, first of all, there's no lighting in there. So it's completely pitch black, okay? You can see each other, but at first, you can barely see each other. Your eyes have to adjust, but it is quite dark in there, so it's hard to see each other. And as soon as he brought in the rocks, it was like, okay, first of all, you're in this small little place. You feel a little claustrophobic, and then there's no lighting, which makes it even scarier. And then then he brings in the heat. And when the heat comes in, when the rocks are in there, and the steam's going and the door's shut, okay, you definitely feel claustrophobic. but you also have a really, really hard time breathing, okay? You feel like you're breathing in fire, okay? The heat is so intense in there that it almost feels like you're being a little bit suffocated, okay? You're having a hard time breathing because you're literally breathing in really, really hot air. So the three combined, I was like overwhelmed by it. I was almost ready to walk out right away. I was like, oh boy, I don't know if I can do this. It's a very scary, intense thing. But I stayed in there. Um, and, I tried to just move past that point where I was, fearful. And then the shaman, he helped us out too because he played like certain little games with us where he'd go around in the circle. So he did this during the full 2 hours. There were points where he'd go around the circle and ask us a certain question. For example, what does the north mean to you, or what does fire mean to you? Fire, the element. And each of us had to go around the circle and answer the question. So that really actually helped to kind of focus your mind off of the darkness and the heat and being claustrophobic. So, he did that for most of the time, and then he would pause in between, questions, and he would ask us to think of a question to ask the group. So we'd have to make up a question in our minds, and then we would have to ask the group, and then the group would respond to our question. So there was this exchange going on back and forth. And then at certain points, we'd stop with the questions, and everybody was given different instruments, so we were allowed to pick what we wanted. They had like some different kinds of shakers, like rattles and things like that. So we picked whatever rattle or shaker that we wanted, and we did some singing. The one girl, the shaman's girlfriend there, she ended up doing some singing, and it was very peaceful. And we were instructed to play some instruments as well, and that also was kind of a good distraction. Also, I'm trying to think here. I did have to meditate at certain points. I think that was really what helped me get through this sweat lodge, okay? So there were times where I was very overwhelmed with the feeling, and I didn't know if I was going to make it till the end. So what I did to combat that, what helped me, was I sat quietly and I meditated, okay? So there were times where I would just try and go within and eliminate any of my thoughts that were in my mind. It helped me deal with the heat, okay? So every once in a while, the shaman had to go back out and open the door briefly to bring more rocks in, because the heat kind of dissipates a little bit after a while. So he has to keep going out and replenishing the heat. So he had to bring more rocks in, put the water over the rocks, and allow the steam and the heat to rise again. And the other thing too is during this this time frame, towards the end, it can be very overwhelming to the point where you feel like lightheaded. And so, we were instructed, because heat rises, right? So if you're sitting up, after a while, you're bound to feel more lightheaded. So towards the end, if you feel really lightheaded, and you're trying to get through the sweat lodge and you don't want to get out and you don't want to give up, then you can kind of lay down on the ground, either like on your back or on your side or something. So what that helps do is that helps eliminate a little bit of the heat that you're being subjected to and that you're breathing in. It also helps with, if you're feeling lightheaded, like you're going to faint or pass out because you're getting too hot, that can also help with the lightheadedness a little bit. So yeah, so that was basically my experience. Honestly, I was very shocked and surprised with myself. I could not believe that I was able to, to make it through the whole ceremony. And the girl that was in there, the other girl, she had done it a number of times. And she was on her cycle at the time, which it can make it harder for women when they're on their periods. It definitely makes it more intense. It makes, it can make you feel lightheaded sooner. And there were a couple points where I thought she was going to pass out. And, she was in rougher shape than I was. And there were a couple times where she had to sit close to the door. And he had, like, her boyfriend or the shaman had to open the door for his girlfriend a little bit so that she could, breathe some fresh air. So, it was opened a little crack and she was laying down and, she didn't look too well, but she actually made it through to the end too. I was quite surprised because I thought a couple times that she was going to give up. But yeah, we all made it through to the end, and it was funny towards the end. My brother and my dad, they were using the clay to make markings on their chest and their body, and I don't know, they were just having fun, and then they wanted me to join in, but I didn't want to wreck my bathing suit, so I was like, no, that's okay. So yeah, so once the ceremony ended, once the sweat lodge ended, we were allowed to go out, and as soon as I went out, I noticed I was kind of weak on my legs. I felt extremely dizzy when I stood up and got out of the cave there, and I felt really dizzy. I felt very lightheaded. Okay, I almost felt like I was going to pass out. At that point, it had been a couple hours since I woke up, 2 or 3 hours, and I was quite hungry. And so there was like this little shower right next to the cave, and my brother went into the shower and put the cold water on himself and cooled down, and then he's like, go in, cool down. And I was like, I didn't want to shock my body, right? So I kind of had it on a little bit, like, not too cold, but like on the lukewarm side. And he comes over and he turns it on cold and blasts it on me. And I was like, oh my God, it was, a big shock, right? Because you're in this really, really hot place, and then you're getting freezing cold water poured on your body. So it's quite a shock. But actually it felt really good, and it snapped me out of my lightheadedness. So even though it was shocking for a few moments, ultimately it felt better overall. So yeah, that was my experience. And then I was okay after maybe about half an hour. The lightheadedness disappeared, and then breakfast was ready, so we were able to go eat our breakfast, our last meal for the day before we fasted. So I think we ate around like 10 or 11, and then we had to fast for about 6 or 7 hours before we could go do the psilocybin ceremony. So yeah, I'll leave you guys with that. I hope you enjoyed this story and my experience on my healing journey. And stay tuned, because the next video is going to be on my actual ceremony and what I experienced, what I endured, the setup of everything. And yeah, just the whole entire experience. So stay tuned for that, and I will catch you guys next time. Okay? Take care and have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are at in the world. Love you guys. Bye.